Hi, I'm Mike McGowan. The United Way of Door County and those wonderful people there have asked me to put a few videos together for you to talk about a couple of topics that are really important as kids grow up. Today's topic that I wanted to address is one that I do all of the time in schools. I'm in about 140 schools every year, speak to about 100,000 kids every year in assemblies and presentations and trainings. And over again, one of the questions that I ask is, how old were you when you figured out the difference between mean and funny? And undoubtedly, 4th and 5th and 6th graders, let alone high school kids, say 4 or 5 years old, which means by the time we entered school, we knew the difference between what was funny and what was mean. One of the things I say to follow up is, I figured you knew. So when your teachers and parents hear you being mean, they just assume you did it on purpose. And that doesn't feel real good. And sometimes kids say, but I was just, what? Kidding. Boy, I tell you what, those 2 words I wish I could get rid of. Just kidding is not an apology. An apology sounds like this: I'm sorry, I blew it. My fault. Won't happen again. Just kidding makes it sound like it's still your fault that I picked on you. A couple weeks ago, I was in a school, and I asked, we were talking about this, and one of the kids said to me, why are some people mean? I don't get asked that all the time, but I think that's an interesting question. So I said, what do you think? And the kids gave me a variety of different answers. Maybe their own life isn't so good. That's one I hear a lot. Maybe they just feel like they can do it. Maybe it's to be more powerful, or they feel like they can make fun of other kids. Maybe they think it'll make them popular. When one of the kids said in the classroom, this is 4th grade, by the way, when one of the kids said, oh, I think it's to make them feel better about themselves, another kid raised his hand and said, whoa, 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 that doesn't work. That's like putting a ladder in the mud. I looked at the kid and I said, what? He said, it's like putting a ladder in the mud. If you're gonna make fun of somebody and make yourself feel better, and you put a ladder in the mud, as you climb up the ladder sinks down into the mud. You never get as high as you wanted to go, and you always get dirty. I just stared at the kid. I looked at the teacher. The whole class was quiet. I said, how old are you, 105? That's one of the most in-depth things I've ever heard. But that student was right. When we make fun of somebody else, we don't just diminish the person we're making fun of. We really diminish ourselves. Not just ourselves, but our family, our group, and all of us around who put up with that, who listen to it without saying anything. It is a common thing when I talk at schools that kids say, what do I do if somebody's making fun of me? Now, oftentimes people will say, oh, you mean bullying? Well, I almost never use that term, because if you say, my kid's being bullied or I'm being bullied, no one knows what you're talking about. It doesn't describe the behavior. Does that mean that somebody stole your lunch money? Does that mean that somebody won't let you sit there? They gave you a dirty look, or you didn't get invited someplace? What does it mean? Because in order to work on it, we have to know what it means. Well, what do we do when somebody is mean to us? I had a girl at a school ask me that question as we were talking about, honestly, we were talking about SpongeBob. And I was telling them a story about an old SpongeBob episode where he told jokes about squirrels. And I said how Sandy had to stand up for herself. And this girl said, can I do that? And I said, everybody can do that. And she said, I want to do it now during the assembly. Very risky, but we let her. She did great. She turned to everybody else in the bleachers and said, I'd really appreciate it if you'd all stop making fun of me for my size. We were just blown away. Now, if you listen to the way she said it, when we're going to stand up for ourselves, we have to be assertive, not aggressive. We have to be confident, even though our heart might be pounding out of our chest, even though we might be really nervous. I'd really appreciate it if you'd knock it off. I'd really appreciate it if you'd stop making fun of me. You know what? That's the name my mom gave me, and I'm named after my grandmother. Could you knock it off? Those are to the point. They're assertive, but not aggressive. The opposite of aggressive is whining and weak. If we're meek with it, stop it. Or we say it with a smile, knock it off. Those are mixed messages because people are reading more of how we put it than the way we put it. So we have to make sure our body matches the words we're saying. Our face matches it. You don't have to look really aggressive. You don't have to look angry. Just have to look confident. That's the first part. Now, I always tell students this. After you're assertive and say, please knock it off, expect that the other person will feel embarrassed at that point, and perhaps they should. But what I've experienced is almost everybody has to get another word in. I let them have it. If the person's next word is oftentimes not the brightest thing in the world, I hear, whatever, right? Or, so, who says? You know, they'll double down sometimes. I let them do it. You can just smile and walk away. It isn't important to win the moment. It is important to win the year. And if after you say that, if you notice that they've stopped it or reduced it or it doesn't happen anymore, then what you said was successful. Now, obviously, if it continues, well, we have to take it up a notch, don't we? And this is where others come in. This is what we call the bystanders, the upstanders. When you hear someone else being made fun of, it is critically important that we create a culture that everybody lets the other people know. It's not okay to do that. Now, almost all of you have done this in the past. You've said, hey, that's my friend, knock it off, be nice. Or you've looked at your friend and said, don't listen to them. Okay, that's one level of support, and it's really important we do that. But a true leader is able to look at your friend. If your friend is not being so nice, and say, hey, come on, man, don't do that. Knock it off. Be better than that. If you can tell your friend to knock it off, you set a positive peer culture in your school and your building that says, we can just accept people for who we are. Now, that doesn't mean that things aren't funny. Things are funny, and we all know what they are. The joke that I use all the time is if you're in school and somebody sneezes or coughs at lunch and milk comes shooting out their nose, all of us will laugh. All of us will laugh because we know it's funny. And I oftentimes ask kids at all grades, what's never funny? You're good. You know them like that. This is what I hear from students. The color of my skin, my name, my size, how I look, my family, my religion, my culture, what I'm like, how bright I am, whether I have learning challenges, physical or mental challenges. We know what should be off limits. And this is where the leadership comes in. If you can create a positive peer culture that says, no, don't go there. That's outstanding. There's a third point. Oftentimes when I'm in schools, because of a lot of this stuff happens on a bus, in a hallway, in the gym, in the locker room, teachers don't even know it. We assume they do. And oftentimes as parents, we think that they should. But if we think about that, we didn't do this in front of teachers. I ask kids all the time, how many of you know somebody who's really nice around teachers and parents, but when they're not around, they're a totally different person, and their hands just shoot up? So if we're being made fun of, we tell the teacher, we tell our parent, we tell someone we trust, and it goes like this. Can I talk to you a minute? There's a group of kids that are making fun of me over whatever. I've asked them to stop. I've walked away from it. I've asked people to support me, and they're still doing it. Would you help? It's almost guaranteed that your parents, administrators, teachers will say, coaches will say, absolutely, what's going on? Because you, one, you're confident again, and two, you've already told them, here's what I've tried, and it's not successful. You're not saying, they're being mean. In which case, a lot of adults will say, including at home with brothers and sisters, try to work it out. And the reason we're saying try to work it out is because we're not always with you. And we'd like you to have these skills to be able to work it out. So, if somebody is being mean, as confidently as you can, be assertive and just say, knock it off. It doesn't have to be aggressive, and you may have to practice this till you get the tone right. And you may have to talk to your friends about, how does this sound when I do it? If you hear it happening to a brother, to a sister, to a friend, to somebody who isn't a friend, you say, hey, knock it off. That's leadership. And if those aren't working, please tell an adult. We don't just take it. We care about you. We want you to feel safe in every environment you're in. This is how we take care of one another, and this is how we create a culture that tells each and every one of us that we're valuable, we're important, unique, and we like you just the way you are. Thanks for listening.